Okay. I see the issue. I have to upgrade to get to all
Hello
that
and
stuff.
welcome to another edition of Sales TV Live. Today, we're examining how to over, excuse me, we're examining how over reliance on sales scripts and automation erode trust and judgment. See, that's where I was relying on a script and it eroded the trust and judgment of my audience right off the bat. We're joined by Deepak Butra. With a career spanning global sales leadership, sales operations, and executive coaching, Deepak has spent decades helping experienced sales professionals understand how behavior, decision making, and judgment shape results long before automation or tactics do. Deepak, welcome.
Rob, thanks for the warm welcome, sir. I'm so excited about this topic. Scripts. Yes, you're right. Scripts, as my wife says, your mouth will get you into trouble all the time, Deepak. And that's exactly what we're going to discuss today, right?
Exactly. So let's jump right into it. In our conversation preparing for this show, you said scripts fail you at the moment judgment is required. Can you explain why scripts feel helpful at first, but actually make experienced people worse over time?
Here's how I would want to explain that, right? Is first of all, this illusion of a script, right? Rob, let's just talk about scripts for 1 second. This term script actually comes from plays and drama, right? And I've been big in that type of stuff. A script is actually a great tool. The script is perfect. The script actually gives you and your fellow participant an understanding of what's going on. In the same way that when you're on a stage, you see X marks the spot. If you stand there, the light's perfect on you, right? Now, here's the bad news. What happens when the electricity goes? What happens when someone decides to move that X to another position? What happens if there's a leak and the audience has to move from the left to the right of the things fall apart at that point, right? And that's the fun that I've realized with scripts. Scripts are great. So if you are in a script and you forget your lines, the other person knows you forgot your lines. So they ad lib, they step in for you, right? But in the real world, your buyer is sitting there. He's on the other side of the equation. He doesn't know your script. He doesn't know what you're getting at. He's listening intently, and you have to be in the moment because you need to listen to what's happening with him at that point. Scripts are, and this is just cognitive sense, right? Scripts force you into a lull, they force you into a rhythm. And sometimes that judgment that you need to make in the sales environment needs you to be out of rhythm. You need to be in touch with, and I think this is a very important point, Rob, body language, where you are in the moment. These are judgment skills, right? And this is what I tell salespeople. You can have the AI onslaught, but if you control that judgment in that moment, you therefore will suddenly realize the value of not having a script. Having a script to a certain point is great, but beyond a certain point, you got to watch out. And that's when you get tripped over, because that's when you end up with that little, what's that, the goldfish moment, right? Drop your mouth just open.
Fantastic. So, at what point does automation stop helping salespeople and start replacing their judgment?
Here's the interesting thing, right? Let's just pause for a second because I'm a process guy, Rob, right? So I was a salesperson who then went into sales ops. So I bring a very unique conversation to this table. And I always tell people one simple thing. Let's forget the word automation for 1 second. Let's just forget it. If you have a fundamental problem in how you communicate with your children, no amount of walkie talkies or expensive gear is going to improve your communication style with your kids. Same thing in business as well. If you have a system or a process that cannot scale, is broken, if you have behavioral issues where salespeople consider CRM to be the enemy, and no one cares about sales stage one, two, three, four, five, six definitions, right? And every time you run $1 million system to get a piece of paper which you then write on the back of a cigarette box, and then you give it to someone who then writes it into a forecast, you have a problem. Now let's put automation on top of that. Automation is what I actually love this, and I'm very careful how I want to say this to you, Rob. But automation has the power to scale stupidity. So before you scale stupidity, just hang in there, slow down. Let's first go back and do the most fundamental of things. How do I need to communicate to my child? Do I treat him like an adult? If I treat him like an adult, what are those parameters? And then get the expensive walkie talkies on top. And I'm sure a lot of people are sitting there wondering, what is walkie talkie? But you know what? Anyone that's got an 8 or 10-year-old out there will know what we're talking about. And we're not talking about tin cans with a string in it. Though I can be honest with you, Rob, if you have a simple process, sometimes a tin can and a string can actually deliver far more benefit to you than a walkie-talkie or major automation. So I always tell people, automation is like I don't know how to say this to Rob without again using bad language, but you buy a cake which is 8 years stale, but then you put on fresh icing on top. It looks so cool, but you take a bite and you're in hospital for 7 days. That's why I ask people to just watch out. That's what automation does to you. Automation scales you. Automation can do so many wonderful things, but the fundamentals have to be there for that scaling to happen. That's how I like to position this conversation. I hope that helps,
Makes
Rob.
sense. So another thing you said when we talked before was you said the best salespeople don't start with numbers. All right. So what did they start with instead, and why does that matter?
Rob, let's be human for 1 second, right? I will bet you top dollar, Rob, that most of the people listening in have always been either on a diet or trying to build muscle, or both, or one of them, right? So let's take a simple example here, right? So I've been overweight all of my life, and my doctor keeps telling me, highly encourage that you lose weight. And I keep telling him, highly encourage you just bill me quickly and let me leave this place fast. And here's the reality with this, right? The notion that we need to do something or we need to change comes from something very different. It comes from respect for numeracy numbers. There has to be some discipline and understanding what you're doing. So, Rob, for me, if I want to change or if I want to do something different, I need to be sold something in a different way. So the way that I look at it is as follows. You are not selling to the moment, you're selling to a solution to the future. In the same way that if I want to motivate myself about losing weight, then the way I would picture it is as follows. So, Rob, I have a 26-year-old, and if someone said to me, hey, your son is dating, one day you're going to have a grandson, how is that going to make you feel? And I'm going to say, wow, that would make me excited. Now that's selling the future, right, Rob? You see where I'm going with this?
Mhm.
So when you sell me the future, Rob, that's how I'm going to change my discipline and my process. Because now what I'm doing is I suddenly realize I actually would like to extend my life. I actually would like to add a few more years because I would like to play with my grandson or my grandchild, right? And I think that's that I would position over here is that how you need to balance this is to sketch the future, show people the future, show people the gain, and then work it backwards. That's how you typically going to get the right behaviors when you're selling or anything in life, right? Even when you're trying to diet to lose weight. So, Rob, bit of a long-winded journey there. I hope you got something out of that.
Absolutely. Along those lines, then, why does starting with the quota often lead even experienced sellers to repeat the same mistakes year over year?
It's like telling someone, I need you to lose 20 kilos, and that's it. And instead of saying to someone that I need you to lose a kilo per week, and I'm using kilos because that's the Asian in me, right? Rob, let's talk pounds, right? You need to lose 20 pounds. Now, I give you a number like that, you're going to freak out, right? But if I tell you that I need you to lose a pound a week, you kind of will breathe easier. And I think this is the challenge with quotas, right? Quotas are supposed to excite, quotas are supposed to motivate, the old carrot and stick approach. Now, in the 80s and 90s, when I was learning how to sell, I honestly used to feel as if the carrot and the stick were used exactly the same way. I just always felt it was being hurting me all the time. So for me, I think it's about balance. A quota is a number. A quota also encourages bad behavior. And I'll tell you when that bad behavior occurs, Rob. It's when you're not making a quota. Think about it. We're human, right? We are experienced. We're supposed to sell. At the same time, we have in the back of our mind, oh, I might have a clawback. Oh, I need to pay money back. Oh, I just bought a car. What happens now? Stuff like that. That's human of us, right? So your quota then becomes, and this is typically why people are what I say, in common language, my wife calls it, that's why you guys are so salesy all the time. And that's the problem. So quota setting, quota bearing, and why quotas are important and why these numbers are important is because they have a huge pressure they create in you. And it requires, and I would say that the best salespeople, the rock star salespeople, are very smart. They disassociate the quota and the burden cost from that. Now, you know what's really cool is that, Rob, when you are making your quota, you have a swag, right? When you're not making quota, that swag's gone, and that's the challenge. Not many people are trained to absorb or mitigate for the absence of that swag. It's like being fired at home looking for a job, but having a job and looking for a job, there is two emotional states there, and I think that's what quotas do. So numbers can be very powerful, they can motivate, but at the same time numbers can also, and this is where I think sales leaders need to actually step up. The way you talk about numbers is also important. And I'll give you an example, Rob. And I'm sorry if this is a bit of a lengthy one, but this is a true story. In March, April this year, I had the most engaging coaching session with a um, SaaS B2B salesperson. His OTE is 280K. And I have to say that, Rob, because I want to give context to the size of the package, right? And he's at 93%. And this is why he called me. He said to me, I didn't need your services. I've been watching you on LinkedIn, but I'm calling because I'm really upset. This is what they said to me today. 7%. Dude, PIP. And I'm listening to this guy and I'm saying, what do you mean PIP? Performance improvement plan at 7%? That is the biggest, weirdest use of the stick approach that I could think of. Whereas the approach should be, you're only 7% off. How can I help you? Let's sit down. Tell me the top three deals that I need to help you close. And buddy, you're not going to close at 7%. We're going to close at 17% because I just saw your pipeline. There's tremendous opportunity there. Can you imagine how this person is going to feel going into a room because of this number in the back of his mind? Now he's not thinking of quota, he's thinking about the minus 7% that he's running at. And I think this is the time for sales leaders to actually understand there has to be a change in how we approach things. Post COVID, I've also noticed the way that my clients talk to me, that my clients work with me, Rob, very different. There is a general feeling that if a salesperson says he's going to work for a company for 3 or 5 years, that's excessive, honestly speaking. The amount of churn you're going to see, the amount of turnover you're going to see is not going to happen because they are desperate. It's going to happen because they have different value systems and they will keep running after those value systems. And the market is going to enable that. That's just the reality. Back to you, sir.
I want to pick up on what you were talking about with the sales leaders, but before I do, I want to stick with the individual contributor and the quota.
Mhm.
Before someone plans next year's goals, what questions should they be asking themselves that have nothing to do with their numbers?
You know, here's the fun part about this, right? The Philip Kotler, I think, was the guy that keeps talking about, culture eats strategy for breakfast and all that type of stuff, right? So here you are setting up your quotas and you're talking about, here's what I always tell people when you do quotas and stuff. I said, just step back for a second there. First, look at the structure that you had in place for this year. How did that structure enable things for you? Now look at that and ask yourself, if the structure held you back, how much did it hold you back by? Now look at your performance and now ask yourself, if I were to improve this structure so that my strategy is executed cleaner, what would my quota setting look like? And I think this is where people make a big mistake. Most quota setting happens based on share of wallet. How much did we make last year? How much more can we make this year? No one ever asks a simple question. Where did we have coefficient of drag? Where did things slow us down? If we were to fix those and if we were to bring some structure and discipline into it, look, at the end of the day, whether you like it or not, Rob, sales can be as difficult as you want it to be. But I've noticed one thing about the top rock star salespeople, right? They actually have a structure and a rhythm to the madness. You may think that they're constantly working, 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 but they're actually working with a particular rhythm. They also have a very smart sense of how to do quotas, discussions as well. They focus on the signal. They eliminate the noise. In quota setting, there is so much noise that can occur. These are factors and things that are completely out of whack. I'll give you an example. So salesperson comes up and says, I need a higher discount. Why? Because I've got 5 more deals in the pipeline. So I'm like, I hear you, but how sure are you that those 5 will happen? And he gives you some estimates and some understanding, right, Rob? And based on that, you then decide whether you want to give a bigger discount or not. And here's the fun part, Rob. 6 months later, the guy comes back with a totally different story, and you accept that also, and you keep moving on. So ask yourself a simple question. How disciplined are you in holding your salespeople's feet to the fire when they make these assertions? What systems do you have in place to actually track those assertions? And right there, you'll realize you have all the expensive CRMs, all of the stuff, and you have this value proposition, business case analysis. You have a back office that does, commercial pricing and stuff. But there's no ways that anyone can track actually the assertions made by salespeople when they say that they're going to do something. Then do they do it? Yes or no? And if they don't do it, then go back and ask, now what bearing does that have on the quota process? Because you can have all the fancy quotas and all the numbers and all the mathematics, right? People tell me, I have a mathematical model that creates this 5% overhang and then have this shadow component to my quota. Therefore, I have a 99% probability of this and 120% probability of this happening. And at the end of the year, it doesn't happen. Because at the end of the day, so as an example, Rob, people tell me, Deepak, the average American family is 2.4. I look around me. I've still not seen point four of a human being living next to me. So that's the problem. So I ask people, when you look at a number, when you look at this, you got 25 salespeople, you're going to do quota setting, and you start telling me about variation and standard deviations and mathematics. And I'm like nodding my head. Wow, that is a complete misjudgment. Just because you have eight numbers adding up to 110% of quota doesn't mean you're going to make 110% of quota. It just not, that's not going to be it. It's just one of those things. So for me, it's a very long-winded thing, but I always ask people, start from a basis of understanding what did you do well, how did you do it for the past year, and now ask yourself a simple question: if I did things the same way, can it scale? Can I make 105%, 110%? The answer is always no, most likely, because you're not putting in the effort. You're looking at the number to excite you, you're not looking at the effort that is required to make the number to excite you. And that's the only thing I would say as a caution to people right there. And to me, culture eats strategy for breakfast, and I'll tell you what, structure eats strategy and culture for breakfast. Structure, structure, structure. That's what I tell salespeople. A lot of people tell me, Deepak, why I won't work with you? Because you're Sandler, and I prefer, let's say, Spin or Miller Hyman or whatever. And my answer is very simple. It's I can be a good Hindu, I can be a bad Hindu, I can move to another religion. The reality is that if you cannot be faithful to one religion, the probably going to faithful to another religion will depend totally on emotional state or some something that's happened to you. It's the same thing. Methodologies are there, and you can't blame methodologies. At the end of the day, selling is B2B, and B2B stands belly to belly. That's how I define it, Rob. Right now, as a human being, you need to be belly to belly all the time. Now, whether it's Sandler, whether it's any other technique, that's irrelevant. So you can't blame the technique. So when I say structure, I'm actually talking about the systems, the methodology, the mindset, and the attitude that you bring to your job and your work. That is what makes the difference. And I can tell you one thing. It's like, Rob, you and I are old timers, and we always say this, this dude can sell ice to an Eskimo. That same dude most likely will also sell an ice pick to that same Eskimo. I guarantee he'll also sell them solar panels, and he's also going to sell them dried fish, and he's also going to sell them, anything. And I think that's the attribute, widgets. And the capability to sell widgets is I don't want to say it's God given. It's earned by process. It's earned by experience. And I think that's what a lot of people discard. That's why scripting is awesome. It gets you going. And that's why when you walk into Barnes and Noble, Rob, you're going to find 10 books on how to break 30 objections. In fact, I don't want to name anyone, but someone that I know and I really appreciate makes millions of dollars by selling a simple book on objection handling, right? And I think you've heard of it, the Black Book of Objection Handling and so on, right? I'm not baiting anyone. What I'm stating though is that 75 or 100 questions memorized is awesome for the novice. It is a disaster for the experienced person. The experienced person needs to act like a novice on purpose. And to do that, you need to have a fluidity of and a judgment with your customer. Trust from scripts. Trust building happens from making the right judgment call at the right moment at the right time and doing it consistently. That's why there's an Amazon principle, right, Rob, which talks about successful leaders that typically are right most of the time. And when I initially read that, I was like, what? That's so presumptuous. But no, it's right. A successful salesperson usually is right with their customers. And over time, his being consistently right is actually what gets him this trusted advisor moniker. And that moniker is what gets repeat sales. And that's how you get to 50 million portfolio, 100 million portfolio. And that's my message that I would, give in my long-winded way, Rob.
So I want to come back to the sales leaders and that 7% that we were talking about.
Yes, sir.
How can sales leaders tell when tools and processes are supporting performance versus quietly undermining it?
Rob, that's a $1 million question. Here's the reality. This is what happens with us as human beings, right? Show me the data. Show me the data. And we show him a pipeline and he sees a number and he's like, then what happens? The seasoned guy walks in and says, I see the numbers, but just a question for you. Where are you exactly and who are the decision makers? Do you know those names? And the guy says, yeah. And he rattles off 3 names. And then the sales manager says, yeah, hold on. I used to sell in this account 6 years ago. Those aren't the decision makers. They are part of the system, but the decision maker, if I recall, is Ralph Ferreira. Have you met him yet? No, wait. What's happening here? Now you have all this data, you have all these tools, you have all this insight, you have all this AI running, you have all this personalized DMs going out. But a person came in and actually told you that your basic circle of influence and coverage model is broken. And I think this is what we need to understand. You can get all the tools in the world. And Rob, I'll give you an example which just blew my mind. I'm sitting with a salesperson. He says to me, Deepak, I have this tool that analyzes a person's LinkedIn profile and actually tells me if he's a D or an I or a S or a C, so that I can moderate my approach. And I said, hey, congratulations, but can I give you good bad news? He says, yes, go ahead. I says, I don't know specifically if this person does or not, but most VPs of sales most likely have paid someone 200, 300, $400 to help them with the LinkedIn profile. And if they didn't pay the money, I bet you they went to chat GPT and said, hey, here's a sample of a couple of good ones, generate one for me. So you are basing your entire perspective on someone who's cut and paste a couple of placeholders from here and there. And I think that's the problem with tools. At the end of the day, like I said, belly to belly selling, right, Rob? You can have all these tools. And here's what tools actually do. In my opinion, tools add what I call micro friction. Tools also become problematic because there's no one unified tool, right? You got a CRM on this window, then you got your little custom GPT on this window, and then you have your little clay and your whole setup running over here, scraping like crazy to give you access to all this data. You are always what I call context swiveling. Now you keep shifting gears. Human brain is not designed for that. We keep bragging to the whole world that we're multi-threading and so on. You're not. And you got to understand that you need to retain your cognition for buyers, but you're already burning your cognition with all this stuff. All the data does is gives you an illusion. And here's another human thing, Rob, that I can just challenge you on. I go to any human being and I tell him, hey, tell me what do you hear? 9, 12, 22, 56, 99, 108, 220. And 100% of the time the salesperson says to me, wait, they're all odd? No, wait. Deepak, are they prime numbers? You know what, Rob? They're not. They're just random numbers. The problem with human beings is that we look at data and we try to find patterns. And we do this consistently. And then when we find a pattern, we latch onto it. And guess what? It's the wrong pattern. Look, I don't know how to say this to you, but I always look at it this way. Focus not on tool progression or stage progression in a CRM, rather focus on human progression. Where am I exactly with this customer? Use language which is in their context. Your customers don't talk tools. Why are you talking tools? Your customers talk process. And that's why this buyer seller dance is so important. And I think tools are problematic in the way that when you nowadays, so you could go for a dance with a customer, right? And you're spending so much time on deciding which shoes to wear and what trousers to wear. And because one says your shoes should be elevated at this degree and the heels should be like this so that your calf muscles get that's over engineering. And that's what tools do. They give a sense of comfort. It's like this, my ex-boss used to tell me about tools. Deepak, I love it that you enjoy inputting into CRM, but here's what we did. And I'm not going to tell you the name of the company where we did this work, Rob, because it's a big name. It'll blow your mind when I say this to you. But there is a U curve of efficiency. Beyond a certain point, the more work you do in a CRM, the worse off you are in selling, believe it or not. And that number that we kind of found, and I'm not saying it's a magic number, was that at 40 minutes on CRM for 25 accounts with a 10 million portfolio seems to be the right amount of time. But if a salesperson was going beyond 40, what was happening to this curve was that the utility curve drops rapidly. That's why it's called an inverted U. And Rob, that blew my mind. And here we are giving tools upon tools upon tools. And I need to close by saying one more thing to you, Rob. Here's my challenge with tools. Tools 10 years, 5 years ago were at least discrete and they were at least understood what they were trying to do. Today with AI, you have tools, but you don't call them tools because you don't think of them as tools, right? But at the end of the day, AI is just a tool. Now, can you imagine, Rob, a person, and I interviewed 8 of the top rockstar salespersons that I've been coaching this year. And Rob, here's what blew my mind. Each one of them spends nearly $300, $400 a month on ancillary shadow AI, and the company has its own set of AI. They have their own set of AI. Why? Because I want to create my own proprietary understanding of who I am and of my accounts, and doesn't want to share it with the company. So any person listening in, any sales leader listening in, I'd like to give you a heads up here. You better be worried about all this data leakage that's happening right now. While you were so busy worrying about phishing attacks and so on, you got your sales guys taking all this data and just creating so much stuff out of it. Now it's magic, I get it. But Rob, you got to understand, when you are trying to create a team of 8 people that are helping each other, but now everyone's got their own silo and understanding, all you're doing is making people good at what they do, but you're not making the team more effective. And in sales, making the team effective is also a very important attribute or dynamic for a sales leader. That's all I want to say at this point on tools, sir.
Absolutely. So, Deepak, if you were to emphasize the one thing you would want the audience to take away from today's episode, what would that one thing be?
You know what I would say? Here's what I want people to understand. I am not anti automation, I'm pro judgment, right? I am asking human beings to do one thing for me. With the AI onslaught, I want you to understand one thing, that AI is not going to take your job. It's your colleague using AI who will take your job. So I also don't want you to be the proverbial head in the sand. I think AI is an awesome thing. Let AI help you propose to a customer, but let your ability help the customer decide, not the AI. When you are automating your tasks, just make sure that you're not automating your thinking. When you're automating a task, make sure you're automating the right tasks, not the broken tasks. Fix the broken task first, right? In my opinion, the word I like to use, and I keep banging on about this, Robin. I'll bang on one last time on your show. Is I want sales leaders to look at AI as augmented intelligence, not artificial intelligence, because artificial intelligence is a label about the AI. What I'm saying when I say augmented intelligence is that I'm saying put yourself in the center of it. You are the human, and AI is in the loop, not the human in the loop. And this human in the loop nonsense has actually created chaos, because it makes a lot of sense when you're using AI and you want to make sure that fact checking is done with a human being. But in sales, AI is not. You're not the human in the loop. You're the human. AI is the satellite that orbits you. Augmented intelligence is how you make the cloud. You seed the clouds with AI, but the rain that falls is your effort, your work. And that delta, that mind shift is what I'm trying to get out to people. And I would say that's now the purpose of my life, is actually to make sure that people understand. To me, AI, when I first bumped into AI, Rob, I honestly speaking, I was, oh, I don't understand this. What is this all about? But then it started improving in leaps and bounds. 2 years ago is the first time when I turned across and I looked at my son who was working next to me, and I said to him, dude, I think your job is gone as a software engineer. I think you're just dead. And guess what? In 2 years, my son was at Microsoft, and I can tell you right now what's happening in the big IT companies. 30% of the low-level work, coding, quality is now all AI. They were hiring tons of people from campus. That's going to fall. Look, sales. If you have a team of 8, potentially you only need a team of 6. That's true. That is going to happen. But Rob, those 6 can achieve so much with AI. So I don't want people to be threatened by the reduction in the numbers. I want people to get excited by the value you can add. I add value with AI because my rate has improved, and the work I do for my customers is now so insightful that even I'm in awe of my own work at times. And I'm sorry if it sounds like one of the 7 deadly sins, but you sit there sometimes asking yourself, could you have thought of that, Deepak? No, I couldn't have. Let's be human and admit it. With AI, Rob, I actually use AI as a devil's advocate. And that's how I'm going to close this conversation with you. Use AI as a devil's advocate. Ask AI, have I thought this through? Are there any loopholes in my thinking? Can you go back into time in history and look at the 25 proposals we've written and tell me a strategy that I may have missed in this conversation? Now that is where you're using AI to the core, not using AI to write, hey AI, I'm meeting the CFO. Tell me how to write an email. Oh my God, Rob, what are we doing here? That's like, walking up to an Olympian and saying, and I actually did this. I was in gym, Rob, and I actually walked up to an Olympian, and I didn't know he was an Olympian. I said to him, hey, could you explain to me this chest press that I'm doing? Am I holding the bar right? The guy looked at me and he walked away. And then I said to someone, what's with him? And he said, are you insane? You just walked up to this guy, then went on to win 3 times a triathlon also. And I'm asking about some silly bench press. This guy's at a different level. So it's just one of those things, right? So AI is at a different level. I'm not asking you to rise to its level. I'm simply asking you to help AI make you rise in higher level of consciousness, decision making, and authoritativeness and knowledge. What I'm learning, I could not have learned. Boss, I could not have learned. The amount of learning I've done is like learn 6 languages, which I didn't do, by the way, because I already knew 6 languages. But that's not the point, right, Rob? The point is, can we interrogate things better? Yes. Can we understand things better? Yes. Can I do it at my own pace? Yes. That is my message to everyone. Sorry, Rob. Again, you're going to shoot me. Dude, I asked for a closing comment and you gave me a lecture.
No worries at all. This has been great. So, on behalf of everyone here at Sales TV Live, to you and to our audience, I want to thank you for being an active part in today's conversation. If you liked what you heard today, please take a moment to leave a review on Apple Podcast, Spotify, Substack, or YouTube. Let us know what you learned and what you'd like to learn more about. Your feedback helps us reach more people like you and fulfill our mission of elevating the profession of sales.